Congratulations on the film. It feels quite timely,
Thank you.
really. And actually, of course, the book was only published about 2 or 3 years ago. So I'm wondering how it came your way.
Um, it came my way through the author, through Giuliano da Empoli. I mean, he was a he. I mean, this is his first novel. I mean, he's mostly a guy involved in Italian politics and a teacher of social science, of political science. So he when he wrote the book, and he wrote it in French. It was published first in Paris. He put me on the list before the on the list of on his mailing list before the book was even in the stalls, before it became some kind of runaway hit. I suppose that he had seen my film Carlos, and he thought I was the right person. If eventually there was a movie that would happen, that I would be the right person to direct it. I read the book, I loved the book, but I was not sure I was the right person.
That's very modest of you. I mean, that's a huge compliment for the writer to have you in mind,
Mm.
don't you think?
Yes, yes, but it was, it's I'm not a big expert on Russian post-Soviet politics. Uh, can you hear me? Because it has
Yes,
frozen all of a
yes,
sudden.
I can. It's fine. I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
So yes, I mean, and I thought it's a big book. It's a complex books dealing with complex issues. It takes place in Russia, and there was no way we could shoot in Russia. I mean, there were a few hurdles. There were a few hurdles. So I was reluctant. I
But
was reluctant because I knew I've made that kind of movies. I made Carlos. These movies are difficult to make. They are big projects, and that comes with a price.
now the title refers to Vadim Baranov, who's the fictional version of Putin's first spin doctor. But I'm wondering who you felt the story actually belonged to. Did it belong to him, or did it belong to Putin, or did it belong to Russia?
I think it's um, when I first met Giuliano da Empoli, where the first conversation I had with him, I said, well, I'm sure you have a lot of experience with Russia, with Russian politics. I mean, that and you must have, people who are pretty close to Putin, to Vladimir Putin's circle, to be able to capture so precisely that kind of environment. And he said, "Oh, Olivier, you're completely mistaken. I've been in Russia 3 times in my life, and my political experience comes from being some kind of spin doctor for Matteo Renzi, for the Italian Prime Minister. He was and he was an advice. I mean, Giuliano's political, and he said, but I said, so how could you write the book? And he said, easy. This is a book about modern politics, and modern politics are the same everywhere. The only thing that is specific about the Russian case, the story of the early Vladimir Putin, is that there's a lot of tricks that they invented at that time. They reinvented the modalities of propaganda for the 21st century. That's where it happens. That's when it happened. So it was interesting to focus on. But ultimately, what I suspect is that, uh, you know, as a political advisor himself, there is something of a self-portrait of Giuliano da Empoli somewhere in the mix.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean that's fascinating because when you watch the film, there are times when it almost feels like a documentary, that you're getting a real look behind the closed doors.
But yeah, I think it's because I don't think if there is anything so special about what we did, but what is not exactly unique but not that frequent is that it is a movie about politics. You don't have that many books really about the inner workings of politics. You have movies about the consequences of politics, about the superficial aspects of politics, movies about how exactly the you know modern universal eternal politics function, meaning, how you manage to get hold of power and how you stick to it, which is what it has always been about. You don't have too many movies tackling that. And so I think it's just that we are doing something that the other filmmakers don't do, but it's pretty much in the open.
You mentioned briefly one of the challenges that went with making this film, but I wondered there must have been others because I mean, obviously there can't have been any Russian involvement,
There
which
is not.
it makes me wonder how much of an interest the Russians were taking in you making this film in the first place.
So there is nothing Russian about the film.
No.
I mean, meaning, we were not allowed to shoot in Russia. We could not use Russian actors because they would be in big trouble if they were part of our production. We could not make it. We couldn't shoot the film in Russian because you don't get that kind of movie financed if it's spoken in Russian and you can't show the film in Russia. I mean that's a handicap and a big limit. And so it had to, the film had to be yeah, so we had no access to Russian sets. We had no access to Russian costumes. We had no access to Russian props. We didn't have access to Russian research, meaning how do you say newsreel footage. So we had to do everything being based in Latvia, which used to be the Soviet Union, but is certainly not Russia. That was certainly one of the big the major challenges.
I thought it was a film where language was incredibly important because it shows how it can be manipulated and used to disguise reality. Now, I know the book is supposed to be it's a monologue, isn't it? So that made me wonder how much of what we were hearing in the film actually came directly from the book and how much had been created by
Um,
you.
a lot of what is very specific to the dialogue of Vladimir Putin comes from the book. I mean, Giuliano da Empoli is really very good at getting the at getting the language of Vladimir Putin. The rest is pretty much on the happening on the screenwriting side. I mean, meaning that as much as the book is much more of of a monologue as you mentioned, so we added a more combative, more proactive narrator who questions Vadim Baranov's assertions, who questions his good faith, who questions and who doesn't buy everything he has to say and the way and the way he strategizes it. That dimension of the narrative of the film comes from the screenwriting. Same thing about the character of Xenia, who has more or less the same position in the film, meaning she's the one person who asks for who questions the morals and the ethics of Baranov in a much more in a much rougher way than in the book. In the book, Xenia is a minor character, and she's the wife of Baranov, and more or less that is it. I mean, we made her a much bigger character, much more important, because she embodies freedom. She embodies the energy that has been channeled by 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 the youth, the post-Soviet youth, who thought that for finally the gates of heaven would open, or something like that. I mean, that all of a sudden they would benefit from a freedom that their fathers and grandfathers had not benefited of. She represents what exactly has been um, s- destroyed, the hope that has been destroyed by the rise of a totalitarian state headed by Vladimir Putin. But she constantly comes back to Baranov, and she comes back to haunt him, like the ideal of his youth, like about how he has betrayed the ideals of the ideals of his youth.
You've got a wonderful cast on the film, but one thing I did or didn't notice, I think, was any sort of attempt at Russian accents, or I might have
Oh,
just missed them. And I wondered
no,
if this was a deliberate decision on your.
no, that was very much a deliberate decision. I thought that Russian accent would have been ridiculous to tell you to give you the whole truth. Because to me, either the movie was happening in English or that was it. But fake Russian accent, I mean, wouldn't cut it. I was reluctant, because I mean, my first choice would have been to make this film in Russian. I would have been much happier in many ways. But then, on second thought, it was the opportunity to work with great actors. I'm just so. It was such a joy to funk to to be able to work with Paul Dano, with Jude, with Alicia. I mean, and I think it just in a certain way, making the film in English gave it something more universal. This is a movie. This is not a movie about Vladimir Putin. This is a movie about, again, about modern politics and how and the perversities of modern politics, and that concerns the Russian, but I think it concerns everybody. I think if you look a little bit more closely, you even may notice that it deals with Donald Trump.